Hello, Friday Sin here, and we're going to be reviewing the long-range booster for the Gundam Barbatos. So there's not a lot to this build or a lot to see on it. There is some articulation, but there's not a lot here. It is a fairly interesting build. Like everything else in this line, it is a very unique design that is very new, but the overall product is pretty much like the assault pack for the G-Self. It looks good, but it is really just a big brick. So we'll go ahead and start talking about the coloring. Everything is the white plastic, except for the large boosters and small clamps on the side here. Every other bit of color you see is stickers, including the gray here, the black down here, and down on the underside here is another sticker, another black. So lots of stickers on this one. Their placements are all okay, and they look okay from a distance. The ones in here are fairly tricky to get in there, but they do look good. If you mess those up, they're not going to look too bad, and if you don't really care about perfect coloring, you can leave them off, and this is still going to look good. But as far as anime accurate, you're going to need to do the stickers or you're going to need to paint. So this is a lot of large parts connected, and it does move around fairly well where it is. So we'll go ahead and start breaking it down bit by bit. So we'll go ahead and look back here. These large boosters are kind of like the full armor unicorn, and they have no other purpose than for looks, and you can just pull them off there. And that leaves you with still two thrusters in the back. They're fairly light. Taking those off doesn't affect the balance, so it still stands alright. The stand it's on now does come in the kit, and it does have two connection points for a little bit of different angles. So you can do the more straightforward angle here, or it does have attachment that you can put in a different spot that gives it more of an upward angle. So looking at the side before we turn to the front, an articulation, this thruster here, there's one on each side, swivels in and out. This thruster up here also swivels in and out. So here's the nice front view. Move the camera back a little. This is a fairly long model. So for our points of articulation on the side here are these big arms here. So there's small bend back here, which honestly in the poses that this has doesn't do a whole lot. These gray parts on the front here lift out. Now they normally will swing this out, so they also swing out all the way out here. This gray part does have two spots that clamp on to these two ridges here. Though it is a very tight fit and it is kind of hard to clamp them on there, so moving it on and off if you're playing with it isn't the most intuitive, but everything in there holds really well, so it doesn't necessarily have to be locked in like that. So this part here swivels up and down a little bit, and it's just pegged in there, so if you want to rotate it, you can. These four arm parts here all have the same points of articulation. They're on, and they kind of come off easily because you have that nice hard surface sitting on a flat part. So if you try just to lift up the gray part, it's going to knock against the black part and instantly come out of its clamp. So you want to lift it up a bit before, well, now it's just coming out completely. So that part's a little bit of a downside. So lift it up before you do that. So it's got a joint down into this black part and a joint on the gray part. So it's got 2 points of articulation. It's pretty good. And then each one's on a circular base, so you can rotate it side to side. So they have a good deal of articulation there. Each one, if they stop popping off on me, so again, the fact that they can pop off very easily isn't great, but they do hold in there well. So if you can see, there's also two pegs there, And those pegs can fit almost any weapon from this series so far. So if you have from the Space Worker set the large bazookas and the missile launchers, you can attach them to their special mounting brackets and put that mounting brackets in there. That will hold on to the large cannons from the first set that the Barbatos uses. You can put the axe in there. You can put the back-mounted pieces that hold the mace and the swords for the Barbatos in there. So they can hold a lot. However, they cannot hold something and be closed, as they close in so tight to the actual Barbatos model that there's just not enough room for them both to fit in there. So on here, we do have some minor holes. So you have a large hole there, and you have a large hole here, or a smaller hole here, if you can see it there at the very end of the tip. So of course, all the black in there are stickers. So the dark gray, like this part here, but up here, stickers. So those two holes only are used when putting this on the Graze. So this is kind of weird that they don't really do much, but yep, they're just for the Graze. So this is, like I said, this looks cool. In a lot of the promotional images we've seen, it kind of has a meteor symbiotic unit going on thing. But it's really more of like the assault pack, where it's just a fairly large backpack and there's not a lot that moves or interacts with the actual model. So this part is also pegged in and rotates a little, and you can rotate it here quite a bit. And then they also have a part in there that swivels down, but because of all the inner workings in there, it's not the greatest. So those are on both sides. Both sides are exactly the same. So look at the front bit here. They're double jointed. So this is its own construction. It has two parts coming out. So both parts swivel inside of the black box and have a swivel on each of these parts. And these parts here lift all the way up and are double jointed there. And this lifts up like that. So the parts that are articulated quite well, but there's not a lot there to do with that articulation. So I mean, of course, if you can find great imagination to do with that, but as far as suit interaction, you don't really need that articulation, so it's all more just for fun play than anything involving the suit. So the front here, that part just lifts up. This part also slides out. Now again, you can take the suit out fairly well without that happening, but it is nice that it does that. And this part down here is a little oddly constructed. So if we can get a shot underneath here, so you can see this black part, and you can see this gray part, and the black part, and the gray part. Well, you have to pull down this gray tab to lean this part back, so that it can do that. Why that gray tab's there, I really don't know. But so then for this part here, this part can also, like the upper part there, slide all the way down. And so that's what it looks like fully opened. So it does look quite good, whether it's closed or opened. And it can fit the Barbatos in there. Other suits, it can most likely fit the Graze in there. I haven't tried this with other suits yet, but I would say the Graze and the Barbatos would fit. The Hakurin, probably not. If you can see in there, there's really not much room between the top of the model and the thing. There's a little bit because it's bent there. So that's usually how it sits. So it's so tight in there you can't even put on his backpack weapons and have him have a sword. So we'll go ahead and pull out the Barbatos now, if I can do it without ripping him in half. So the Barbatos is the Barbatos. It builds exactly like the original Barbatos. Everything's there. You're going to get the Barbatos, you're going to get his sleeve, you're going to get his mace, you're going to get his katana, you're going to get a new sword for him. And because this kit also includes 2 large bazookas, you're going to get the backpack connector parts for the large cannons. So the part that he sits on in there is just the little peg that you use for the stand. And there's also a square hole there. So we might be seeing something more that can fit in here later on. So that's about it for the articulation and what the suit actually is. So for some parts, I'll go ahead and close these up. So there's one other part I don't have on here right now. It has the 2 large cannons. So the cannons come out and they're just by themselves. They look exactly like the cannon from the Mobile Suit Worker Set 1. However, they are independent pieces of plastic. So before that one, this part would move back and forth. The barrel would come out and attach to the side. So even though the mold is exactly the same, and you have that large side part that's supposed to hold the barrel, it's just 2 pieces of plastic put together. The barrel doesn't come out, this part doesn't move. The only articulation on here is the handle swiveling back and forth. So then that just pegs into this bracket here. So you have 2 of those. So it pegs into the bracket here, and then there is a hole on the top, and you just put it in there. So there is plenty of swivel side to side. There is a part in there to stop swivel past this point, but you still have a great range of motion. You have a little up and down swivel. It can't do any forward swivel to look down. The design doesn't allow that, but you do have a little bit up and down in the back. With this thing on, you cannot raise the arms up very high. So usually it'll say to take that off when you want to put the Barbatos in there and raise up the arms. So that's really all there is to that. But it, of course, has interactions with the other suits. So if you take off the Barbatos' backpack and then chop this up into parts. So when you want this to interact with the Barbatos and act as his backpack, you just need to be able to pull out this part. So as you can see, it has that little peg there. Pulls out fairly easily from where it is back here. If you can see that. So you want to pull out both of those. And then you want to take the main part in the front here and go ahead and pull that out. So you see the peg there. That's what the part that fits in there looks like. And this is the part for the Barbatos. So you take this part, slide it in, reposition that lower part so it's not on the way. Gonna remove the Barbatos' backpack, and it's gonna plug it into his backpack. And there you go, he's sitting on there. And the backpack is his only point of connection. So you can do things to look like he's holding on to something behind these hand shields and using these arms, but there's no points of connection for him to actually hold on to. So that's it. That's it for the Barbatos. As far as the Graze goes, you just switch out the backpack part with this piece. We're going to go ahead and remove the Barbatos from this. So you switch out that backpack part. Then you take off the side arms completely. So you'll pull those off. You'll pull out the swivel joint that's in there. So then you're left with just, try and move back from the camera a little, we'll set that to the side. So then you're left with just this big Star Destroyer looking part. So you'll get special connectors for the Graves. You'll get this part for this. I'm not going to put the Graves in there, even though I'm pretty much going through all the work right now. So you're going to take off his kneecap, and you're going to replace his kneecap with this part. So after you've replaced his kneecap, you're going to manipulate these so they don't get in the way. So you're going to want to angle these down. These, the lower ones, don't have much of a deal. So then you just take that big cap and you plug it all the way in there. So then that plugs on and that holds in. His foot stands down on this part here. And that lower part we were talking about, you get this extra thruster that plugs into there, fits on real nice and snug into that curve. And that fits so nicely, and nothing up here is used. So I guess, forward view, it may look a little silly, but it's just odd that that's not used at all. And then, of course, having that there also keeps you from being able to pull this out because it sits on the ledge up there. So essentially, the two arms for Barbatos become the legs for the Graze. And that actually makes the Graze's body so long that you're going to have to bend those knees up into his chest to keep this from dragging on the ground, because even the stand isn't high enough at that point. So in the end, if you're really digging the more brutal design aspects of this series, this isn't going to disappoint. It has the nice sharp edges, the more square. It's not that big round fluff part, so it's very mechanical. And if you're digging the bigger things like meteor units, the assault pack, the GN arms, this is pretty much in the same class, though it's not as interactive as some of those other ones. But otherwise, it still looks great, it builds great, it's very nice and sturdy. So even though it doesn't have a lot of interaction, it's going to look great in your collection. It's going to be a nice, sleek ship design up there with everything else. I love the look of it. The build is nice. The articulation is nice. The only downside is it doesn't seem to have a lot of function. But what function it does have is very nice, and it is worth a buy. So I hope my review helped you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like and share it around, and have a great one.